Hello everyone and welcome to all of the ups and downs for Dot and Bubble. I am Seán Ferrick. I am once again filling in for Ellie because it's somebody's birthday over the weekend. She'll probably kill me for telling you that, but sure, listen. She'll just have to work twice as hard next week. There is probably going to be quite a lot of discussion about this episode, I feel, in the years to come. So there is something I want to say right up front about it, is that we have opinions on this episode here at WhoCulture, and there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of days. Not all of it good, not all of it bad. This is that episode of the season. Okay, if that is tantalizing enough for you, let's get straight to it. Here's all the ups and downs for Doctor Who Season 1, Episode 5, Dot and Bubble.
Dot and Bubble.
Straight away, I'm coming in with an up for this week's episode, and that is the tone which is set straight away. I mean, you know from that opening scene the world that they're trying to create. I think is what I should probably address from the beginning, the comparisons that this episode is going to get to such other things as Black Mirror and even that episode of The Orville, because this is the big social media episode, and I mean how we get sucked in and how we live our lives through social media. There will be inevitable comparisons. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think if you're going to handle topics like this, you are going to have comparisons like that. Do I think they massively succeeded? Well, I guess you'll see as the episode goes on. Leading straight on from the tone of the episode is that absolutely shallow, saccharine, the way they interact with each other, all of these people in Fine Time who are interacting via the dots and the bubbles. And it is so true to life. Let's be real, there is an awful lot of truth in how these little windows of people's lives and how they are styled, how they presented themselves. I feel that that is very, very, of course it is over the top, and of course it is a direct satire of how people present themselves on social media, but there's also a lot of truth to it, as the best satire has. I think how the bubbles are presented is generally quite an up in this episode. And of course, you know, the message is about as subtle as a brick to the face, but, you know, how we get sucked into our bubbles and we don't want to look outside and we don't want to look beyond. Is it a bit on the nose? Yes. Yes, it is. But overall, I don't think that was a down for me. I do have a down, and that is that we don't have an awful lot of episodes to work with, and here's a second Dr. Light episode in a row. And so we know why, is that when this series was filming, Ncuti Gatwa was also filming for Sex Education as well. So there really was only a premium amount of time in which we had him available for filming. And what they do with him, I think is very, very good in this episode. Yes, it is effectively the Doctor and Ruby on a Zoom call with Lindy for most of the episode, but I do think, as little as it is, I do think they manage it well. I'm just concerned that we only have 8 episodes in a season. We've had 2 Dr. Light ones in a row. This is something I feel that if next week we get around and there's loads of the Doctor, happy out altogether. There is something as well. So for the up that I gave to how the bubbles are presented, I did mention about it being about as subtle as a brick to the face, and I do have a down in that. And that is, there is no layers to the message of social media bad. And I'm not necessarily saying I agree or disagree either way with that, because we could have a 9-hour video on the merits or the demerits of social media. No, what I mean is that already in media, we're kind of having a bit of a, oh, it's another hammering home message that social media is bad. Right, okay, cool. And I do feel that this falls into that. It doesn't really have anything new to say on that front, which is a shame, because even Russell T Davies wrote this episode, and also it's been percolating in his mind for a while, because we talk about the fact, which I will talk about later on as well, that this was an idea that was pitched to Stephen Moffat back in 2010, so this is something that has been, you know, developing for a long time. I feel that Russell himself did it better in years and years, and I think maybe that is, perhaps it's unfair for me to say, oh, hang on, that's another show, but it's the same writer. So I feel that Russell has great things to say about how social media affects our lives and how we see the world around us. I just feel that this one pales a little bit to his previous work. I'm going to give a whopper of an up to Callie Cook. So much of this episode rests on her shoulders, and I think she manages to do what so many performers, it's hard to play a character like this and to elicit any kind of genuine response from an audience, from a character that could be seen as quite one-dimensional all the way through. In how much I didn't like Lindy, I was compelled to follow her, even when I was frustrated with her, and even when I was like, all right, I'm so done with this story, what happens next? And I think that comes down to the performance as much as anything, especially because I have some things to say about Lindy as this will go on, but I think Callie Cook took what could be a very thankless role, and I think she carried the episode very, very well. Also, I want to give an up to just how she was singing Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini, and how that became almost like a mantra for a little while in this episode. I mean, it's a bonkers song. It's, you know, it's as meaningless as it sounds, and that's kind of the point. And it became something that she sort of hummed away to herself while so terrified to look outside of her bubble that I really engaged with that. So that was some flipping excellent acting, and also the use of that song. Fantastic. The actual holographic display of the bubble and how it completely surrounds the user's mind, that's an up from me. And especially I can see why in 2010 they kind of decided to wait for a while, because realizing that, probably would have, well, first of all, cost an awful lot more back in 2010, and perhaps just wouldn't have looked as good. Whereas I think that if we had dots today, which I know that sounds very naive, I presume we do. I mean, we just use phones instead. I think this is what it would look like, and how it becomes this physical barrier, so to speak, to the world around. I will say, down, outside of the bubble, Fine Time is a bit dull. The actual skyline we see in the beginning there was quite interesting, but once you get down on the ground, it's just any other estate. That was a bit of a disappointment. Now, perhaps that was the point. I'm going with my first reaction here. That was a down, I'm afraid, from me. What is absolutely not a down, and what is a definite up from me, is those slugs. This is something that Doctor Who never fails to do, is that sometimes don't overcomplicate things. It's a slug. Make it a slug. And it was pretty bloody good looking. Obviously it's touched up a little bit with some CGI, but generally we know from set photos that these are physical models of these slugs, and it looks like what you would expect from Doctor Who. Think about the obvious comparisons, I think, to this episode will be Aliens of London World War III and the Slitheen. And I think, thematically, some of the subtleties, if you like, these three episodes are obvious comparisons as well, because farting monsters in Downing Street. Okie dokie, yep, Russell, we see where you're going with that. I'm not saying I disagree, but yeah, we see where you're going with it. Same with these are slugs that are just walking around slowly and you get eaten. It's bloody simple, and I think overall it works. Also, it was pretty horrible. Poor Bertie Lester. That was rotten. And this is the kind of Doctor Who horror that it can get away with. Here was a person being horribly eaten with the suggestion of many more people being horribly eaten as well. And yet it's all bright and bubbly, and it's Doctor Who, and it's, obviously we've spoken many times about it. It's not actually quite Saturday evening stuff anymore. I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say it's Saturday evening hide behind the couch kind of fare, and it absolutely works. Of all of the little characters that pop up in Lindy's feed, Dr. P taken up there, because his name is Dr. P, first of all, and also there was this brilliant moment of comedy. It's just after Lindy sees the slug. Dr. P comes on and says, your need to urinate has skyrocketed, which is possibly the phrase of the episode for us. Like little things like that adds a breath to this world that otherwise, perhaps thematically, would be very insular and small, as we all are in our bubbles sometimes. But yeah, it expanded it a little bit for me. Another great moment in this episode is, of course, this week's Susan twist. And we get the first instance of the Doctor and Ruby fully recognizing her, to the point where the Doctor goes, you were the interface of the ambulance. Now, it's clear that this, we'll say Penny, doesn't see Ruby or the Doctor, whereas they both see her. I can only imagine now, with only a few episodes left, this is going to start snowballing now. We had that little bit of recognition last week where Ruby recognizes the hiker, and now the doctor specifically said, this is who you are. I think it was handled quite well. Also, at this stage, I think Susan Twist just gets an up from us every time, because I'm enjoying how they're drip feeding her through the season as well. And also, poor old Penny, she becomes kind of a mask for what's really going on. The Doctor and Ruby manage to get Lindy to see beyond her bubble and see those slugs around her. And then we get the bit where she realizes she can't walk without instruction. This is where I feel losing subtlety here. I thought that was just a bit too far. Muscle memory, if nothing else, would probably help in that case. And even if that's, all right, come on, Seán, don't overthink this, which is fair enough. I thought it was a bit overdone, but it does lead to this scene of Lindy meeting Ricky September, and I didn't realize how much I was going to like Ricky September, and I really liked Ricky September. So first of all, that meeting, and particularly, that was my first hug. I loved that. That was good. I really enjoyed that. And Ricky himself, because I wrote down a note as I was watching this going, is Ricky actually someone else? You know, is Ricky like just a facade? Because Ricky seemed to have that confidence that certainly nobody else in Fine Time seemed to have. And then as it went on, we realized, actually, no, Ricky is just a confident character, one who had previously managed to put down the dot and move away from it, which is how Ricky, you know, every morning, Ricky, who is the most successful influencer on the bubble, just uploads a bunch of videos every morning and then goes about his day and reads books and everything. God, wild. And I like how Ricky becomes straight away effectively a carer for Lindy. And Lindy, again, I mean, Callie Cook is playing her as the most pathetic character. And again, there is bits where I wrote down, finding it hard to follow along with Lindy's story here. And that does not change for a moment up to a certain point. But then in this pathetic style, when she does this was my first hug, I actually felt, oh, okay, no, there's something here that I can root for. You know, you're going to find Lindy discovering the real world and that there is something more than beyond our bubbles. I did enjoy that exchange very, very much. When we get to the communications lobby and it's Ricky who discovers, like, there's no point going to the homeworld, he decides to lie. And that is, I understand, that's a very Doctor thing to do. This was in my, well, you know, Ricky was looking for his parents as well, and, you know, maybe, I did actually for a second think that he might be like an avatar created by the Doctor, because the Doctor Ruby can't get in. Anyway, he wasn't, he's Ricky. And I liked him. I was rooting for him. First, a down. So the dots are evil. Right. I'm having a logic problem. So the dots are evil because, as the Doctor says, you know, you're here being so basically vapid and, you know, boring every day that the computers have learned to hate you. Okay, so did the dots bring the slugs? And if that's the case, have the dots also worked at destroying the entire homeworld, which is shown to be overrun with these slugs as well? And if perhaps not, is this just a cosmic coincidence? They decide to work together? Perhaps. But if that's the case, then why didn't the dots just finish off everyone themselves? There was too many plot holes in this bit for me. So the dots turning evil itself, not a down. The logic problems around that was a down from me. The discovery that people are dying in alphabetical order, fine. There was too much. Only some people are being, well, how are you going? Well, why is it not that? And it was overdone. So I was like, oh, okie dokie then, fine. You know, and then we get to, we're right next to Lindy, and then she rings the next person on the list, and that person gets eaten on the call. Oh my goodness. And of course, you know, the delay tactic being they have to figure out the super duper duper maximum password to get through the door. Sure. I do have an up in this scene. Based on what we've seen with Lindy, and how Callie played her, I'm going to give an up to Lindy's betrayal, because that hit. That was really, really, I wasn't expecting her to betray Ricky the way that she does. I mean, we see it's unambiguous. Ricky does not make it out of that room, and the betrayal on his face as well. That was a hell of a moment.
Lindy.
My down for the episode is the character of Lindy. When you have a character whose only trait really is she betrayed someone who tried to help her, which then to a certain extent gets expanded on in the next scene, that to me is one-dimensional. And I'll discuss it a little bit more in a moment, but I don't feel there's enough in Lindy to lift the character out of just, oh, so you're just horrible, but you're not even multifaceted horrible, you're just dull. And that's a shame. And again, I really want to stress, this is not the performance. You know, this is how the character was presented. Callie Cook had a thankless job with this character, and I think she did very, very well with what she had. I just thought there was nothing in the character that made me care, really, as the episode goes on, and then especially where we get to in the end. We get through this door, and Lindy comes face to face with the Doctor and Ruby. Now, funny behind the scenes fact, the Doctor and Ruby, this was their first scenes filmed together, Millie and Shooty. Which is why I felt that their energy was quite low initially in this scene. And perhaps that's simply because it's basically the first time they played together. Not as much of a criticism maybe as it sounds. I just felt that there was no urgency in this moment. Lindy then comes through and then we get that twist. Okay, so spoiler, they're all a big planet of racists. Okay, so if this is the episode that is going to tackle the idea of racism in Doctor Who, in this era where now the Doctor is being played by a person of colour, and this is how it's presented? So where we have hummed and hawed either way about this, and where we feel that there is strength in this is the utter banality of racism. The idiots who, you know, they are better, they are this, they are that, and there is no, you know, it's just like, we're better than you because, you know, you look like this. Yeah, we could talk to you over a screen, but in real life, gosh no. The Doctor, you know, suggesting that they come away with him, and they all just laugh. Of course not, this is a dreadful scene. There's even, once you know the twist, there are some horrible moments dotted throughout the episode where, you know, automatically the Doctor gets blocked, but she does talk to Ruby. You know, there's a suggestion, she kind of goes, are the slugs something to do with you? And once you know where it's going, that's awful and it's horrible. So the strength, I think, of this twist is the utter banality, the stupid belief that they are better than him because he is a person of colour. But where I feel it falls flat is that if the message is the Doctor saves everyone no matter what, which I believe was the intention here, that is something we've seen in Doctor Who before, and frankly we've seen it done better. Now what I do want to say is that Ncuti Gatwa knocks it out of the bleeding park in this scene, because the utter shock and frustration that the Doctor shows, more so that I don't get that the Doctor's upset so much as he is just, oh my god, what? You know, you see Ruby gets it and she's just, oh my god. And like this moment where, you know, the Doctor, tears are running down his face. I never got that the Doctor was personally offended or personally upset by this, that he was so frustrated for the utter stupidity that he was seeing in front of him, that he was just like, I'm crying for you, not for me. So that was Ncuti Gatwa, just like, you know, give that man all of the awards, will you? I just thought it was a bit like, you know, terrible person, betrayal, racist, gone. And the fact that it was tacked on to this message about social media bad, I feel the episode set out to do too much and didn't exactly execute anything the way it maybe wanted to, or the way it maybe believed it could. I think there's going to be a lot of discourse around this episode, particularly around this ending, for quite some time to come. I feel that if we never see Lindy or the people of Fine Time again, this is just going to be, oh, that episode. Do you know, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And again, if the message is the banality of racism and the stupidity of this belief, then okay, I will argue that perhaps they executed that. It just didn't really hit it out of the park for me. I did think it would be absolutely hilarious if that pontoon just collapsed as they were sailing out. But again, I don't know if that would have been the right tone just after this, because I think it would have been almost comical, and you know the Doctor wouldn't leave them in immediate peril. You know, he does say, look, if you go out there, you'll die. But they are at least fully able-bodied, they are of sound mind, well, they're not of sound mind and judgment, they're of mind, and they decide to go out into this forest. But they could do that as a group. It is their choice at the end of the day. Whereas if they were suddenly attacked by slugs, the Doctor would, of course, step in, and that would change the ending. So I was really left dissatisfied by the ending of this episode. I don't think it particularly achieved what it set out to achieve. I would love to know, how did it sit for you? Because even here at WhoCulture, we have talked about this, and we have talked about this, and we have talked about this. Technically, we've talked in circles about this. What did you think? I do have it down. I just never really got why Fine Time. Fine, it was this enclosed space where the rich kids went, and, you know, it was basically like summer camp. They went to party. Okay, fine. But how long have they been there? I know they say you're there for so many years, but it doesn't really feel like that. And so, was this something that was set up by the Dots? Or, you know, and then claimed it was by the parents to basically have something to do, you know, enclosed feeding, effectively like farming their food, which is slightly more horrible, which I think would work better. Or was it just this cosmic coincidence that we did the homeworld first? I didn't really get the premise of being on Fine Time. And also, why is Fine Time deadlocked? You know, the Doctor was saying he couldn't bring the TARDIS in, he couldn't get in, which means, we know from Doctor Who lore, it's deadlocked. Why? It was all just a bit too many questions. And I bet at this stage you're going, Seán, can we have Ellie back? Because she seems to like Doctor Who more than you. And you know what? I kind of understand. As we were setting up this video, we were laughing. I was like, you know, oh, great, I'm going to be the grumpy one. And, you know, we're going to have Ellie back in a couple of weeks. And she's going to be bubbly and over the top and everything. Over the top, as if I'm not over the top. But, yeah, okay, look of the draw. Look of the draw. So, I will be with you again next week for the ups and downs. So I'm terribly sorry in advance, or I hope you enjoy. We will see. And Ellie will return after that, after she has completed her very, very, very hard-earned holiday. In the meantime, everyone, you look after yourselves. As I say, I want to know what you think of this episode, so do let us know in the comments below. Please make sure that you're talking to us on social media. Ha! Isn't that ironic? Keep things wibbly-wobbly, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks very much.